Welcome back to the IU427 Garage, everybody. We're going to talk about the rear brakes on the King's Cobra this week, and really what your options are when you choose to go with 15-inch wheels on one of the Mark IV replicas from Factory 5. All right, so here's the poop on the Factory 5 15-inch wheel combination when used in conjunction with their 11.5-inch rear brakes. The Factory 5 rear wheels are a 15 by 9, and they're an offset that allows their 11.5 or 11.65 inch brakes to fit within the wheels. Now that doesn't mean that every 15-inch wheel available, whether it's the same offset or a different offset from another manufacturer, is going to clear those 11.5-inch brakes. I'm going to continue to call them 11.5-inch because it's just easier. But so think about this. It's a 15 by 9 width, and they call out a 15 by 8 on the front, and then they give you the wheel and tire package as like a combination. So the biggest tire that they're recommending in the back to fit within the confines of the fender is a 275 50-15, I believe it is. And I think on the front they call for a 235 60-15. I'll double check those numbers. I'll put what I'm sure of in the description box of the video. So that's what they recommend. What the owner did here, because the Factory 5 wheels were out of stock during COVID. Factory 5 didn't even know when they were getting any new wheel orders in. And so, he got tired of waiting, and I can completely understand that. However, when you think about how long your build is going to take you, and you really need to be realistic about how long you're going to be building this car. For the majority of shade tree mechanics building this car in their home shop or their home garage, conservatively figure it's going to take you a year. I would say the average build is between a year and 2 years. So, somewhere in between is 18 months. We generally can get a build done here in about 10 months, but I'm talking about with one car or one project in the shop, and I'm working exclusively on that one vehicle that's in the shop. You can see right now we have 3 different vehicles in the shop, and so I'm spreading my time out in between 2 of them primarily. But the Mustang project is a different, it's a horse of a different color. So figure 18 months. You don't need those tires sitting around your shop, and I've said this on many occasions. The worst thing you can do is go out and buy wheels and tires first, because the tires have a life of about 5 to 6 years, and so if they're sitting in your shop for, let's say, 18 months to 2 years, you've already lost that amount of time. Regardless of whether they're in your shop or on the road, they start to degrade, and they're going to start to get hard, and so therefore you're going to get your car on the road, and what do you got? 3 to 4 years left of life in your tires? So wait to buy your tires. I always suggest going out and buying some rollers. So what's a roller? Well, it's going to be a late model or a 90s or sometimes even an 80s Mustang, depending on whether someone did a 5-lug conversion. But figure from 94 on, every car, every Mustang was a 5-lug. All those wheels will fit, and most of them are 16-inch in diameter or better, so regardless of what brakes you've chosen, the wheels will fit without modifications, generally speaking. One of those exceptions is going to be if you went with the big wheelwoods on the front. You may not get 16-inch wheels from a 94 or 95 Mustang to fit over the calipers. So you may want to look at 17-inch wheels. And all those wheels can be found on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or whatever, usually for a couple $100. They'll have tires on them. Usually if the tires hold air, that's all you need. So let's get past the lecture on tires. So the owner bought these wheels because the factory 5 ones weren't available. So what do we have here? In the front, we have a 15 by 9. So this wheel should actually be in the back for what factory 5 calls out use on their wheel and tire package for the 11.5-inch brakes. We've got them in the front. Now they clear the brakes in the front, no problem. The brakes in the front of this are from 94 through 2004 Ford Mustang GT. So it's a 11-inch rotor, not an 11.5-inch rotor, so it's a little bit smaller, and it's a 2-piston caliper that fits within that 15-inch space. Now, you're going to ask, well, why don't the back ones fit? Well, because it's a bigger rotor. It's an 11.5 or 11.65, as I pointed out earlier. So it will fit in the factory 5 wheel at a 15.9 with a 275 tire on it, but it won't fit in this case with a 15 by 10 5, so 10.5 inches wide, and clear the brakes plus clear the 3-link assembly. So I've mentioned my disgust with the vendor that sold the customer these tires, because he should have known better. Not the customer, but the vendor that sold them. And I'm not going to mention him by name because it's not fair. But this particular vendor and I have never seen eye to eye on things before. So I'm not going to bring my personal feelings into this. But these wheels will not fit the factory 5 supplied brakes. So basically, I took off the brake mounting hardware. So the caliper bracket, I took off the mounting bracket for the caliper mounting bracket, which is these two pieces, the factory 5 supplies. And then they have you adjust the position of the caliper in the back with a series of washers. Now, I knew that we weren't going to be able to get these brakes to fit no matter what. They just don't fit within the confines. And we would have had to space the wheels out so far, the wheels would have been 2 inches past the outside of the fender wells in order for the calipers to just fit. And we have other issues besides this that we need to address as well. And so I just thought, you know what? I've got some 94, 95 rear brakes upstairs. I didn't have rotors, which I thought I had, but that's not a big deal. I picked up a set of rotors for, I think, $10 a piece from Rock Auto. So by the time we dealt with shipping, I think I was at $27 for both rotors shipped to the shop. And then I went online and I purchased these caliper mounting brackets from a company called, oh crap, now I can't remember. I'll put the description and a link for these in the description box down below. And if I remember the name, I'll bring it back up. Hang on. There we go. Engineered Velocity. So these are a really nice set of brackets. The steel portion is CNC cut. Then the aluminum part where the caliper mounts its mounting bracket too is aluminum, and you can see that it already has the spacer portion machined into it. So you're not going to have to use those pesky washers like Factory 5 has you use in order to space the caliper to get it centered, because they've already done that, and they've got basically a 2-piece assembly that's just going to go on and not have issues. So before I ordered any of that stuff, I wanted to make sure the 10.5-inch brakes were going to fit. And so what I did is I pulled off one of my brackets from upstairs along with a 94-95 caliper. You can see it in there, it's painted blue. And I test fit it. Now, the bracket that I have is for the 9495, which a lot of people will know has a different offset for the axle because the axle is 3/4 of an inch longer per side for those years and later versus the 93 and before Mustangs. So it won't work with what we have on here. I need those brackets, but I wanted to make sure the calipers were going to clear. And as you can see, we've got good clearance. We've got about 3/4 of an inch clearance all the way around with those calipers mounted. So let me pull this wheel off and I'll show you what I did to test fit. So I have the 94-95 caliper mounting bracket or axle bracket right here, and you can see there's this section cut out of it. And there are some manufacturers of these brackets that sell you a bracket just like that. As a matter of fact, the factory 5 one right here is cut out, so you don't have to pull the axles out in order to put the brakes on. Pretty cool, right? Well, I've got to pull the axles because that has to go on before the axle, and then the axle will go back in. But I knew I could test fit everything and test for the diameter of the rotor and everything else by bolting this on and a caliper and making sure everything was going to fit. Now, we're probably going to turn this forward because what I'm going to show you when I put the wheel back on, one, this caliper is going to move in this way, 3/4 of an inch. You can see the offset in the bracket right here. So it's going to move in that much. Well, 3/4 of an inch in is going to start putting us really close to the collar on our coilover. And so with that, I really don't want to get it that close because I'm going to show you we've got a lot of other stuff that we're dealing with that's just as tight, if not tighter. We are under the car now, and these are the other clearance issues that we have. Now, it's not the same on both sides. Actually, on the passenger side of the car, I don't have an issue with clearance. There isn't any interference between any of the 3-link assembly, the brackets, and the wheel. But as you can see on this side, clearly we're hitting the track lock bracket on this side. Now, when I talked to the owner and we were discussing what our fixes would be, I told him first, hey, let's see if we can make what we have work. By what we have, I told him that I had some calipers here at the shop and that if all we had to get was some brackets and some rotors, that would be the least expensive way to remedy this situation rather than going out and buying a brand new set of wheels and a brand new set of tires. Because even as it is, these are 295s that are in the back, and while they'll fit on the factory 5 15x9, they're going to look funny because it's just too wide of a tire. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to modify this track lock bracket and shave this corner and then gusset it with a welded piece to put all the strength back in it. And I have a second track lock bracket here. Actually, I have a couple sets that we're going to cut up. I've actually already cut it up, but I want to put it on and install it to make sure it's going to clear before I weld the gusset on. So let me go ahead, I'll grab that piece and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is the track lock bracket that I have that I've already started to modify, and you can see I cut a pretty good section off of the corner of this. So if you compare the two of them, you can see that the one that's installed in the car now comes down at that angle to a point, and that's where we're hitting on the wheel. And I've gone ahead and I've relieved that section of this track lock bracket that I'm holding up. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually weld a gusset across here. So I'll have a triangular shaped piece of metal that'll be welded on all corners and sides and reinforce that piece. It'll still allow us to get the coilover in there with its spacers and have it in there properly the way it's supposed to be, but it's going to give us clearance for our wheel when it goes on. Now with the light on, you can actually see how much clearance we're going to have for the caliper when it goes in. And now it won't matter whether we mount the caliper on the front or the back as far as the clearance. It'll remain the same. The only difference will be where the emergency brake cable ties in, and then where and how close to our coilover we are. So mounting the calipers on the front of the axle will give us much more room for space between the coilover and the caliper. Over on this side, you can see we do have clearance for the track lock bracket and the tire. And up at the top, we do have clearance between the coilover spring and the wheel, and the tire for that matter. So everything clears over on this side. Now, if you run, your air pressure in your tire way low, like 9 or 10 pounds, you might get some ballooning of the tire and it might rub that spring. And remember, we're at full droop right now, so where the coil springs are in relationship to the tire, it's going to change just a little bit. But we still have about a 1/2 inch clearance in between the coils of the coilover and the actual tire itself. Over on this side, I'm not going to be able to give you the same view because I just can't get the tire to come in enough at the bottom to get the wheel to sit flat against the hub. And I do not have a rotor on this side right now either. And so the rotor is actually going to space the wheel out about 1/4 inch. That's about the thickness of the rotor where it goes over the flange. So I can't really give you a good representation of that, but I did have the rotor mounted just like I've got it mounted over here. And it looks as though we're going to remain the same amount of clearance between the coils of the coilover and the tire. Now, don't get me wrong. We've got a long ways to go on this to make all of this stuff work. And in the end, we still may be running a 1/4 inch spacer on each side. But we did pull off, I think this is a 705. So this is probably a 3/4 inch spacer. I'll see if I can grab a tape measure and see exactly how thick that spacer is. It's probably in between 3/4 inch and 1 inch. That is a 3/4 inch spacer. So if we can get those wheels in a 1/2 inch farther than they were, I'd love to get them in the 3/4 inch of that entire spacer, and we're going to try. But the bottom line is if we can get those in a 1/2 inch, at least they won't be sticking outside the fender. And they were right at the edge of the fender the way the car arrived here. And we need to be able to put wheel weights on these tires because the wheel weights that were on it are gone. I can see where the adhesive was that held the stick-on weights on there, but they were all torn off by the calipers because the calipers were rubbing the inside of the wheels, or the inside of the weights anyway. So that's where we are with the brakes in the back. I wanted to include this in last week's video, but it was a lot of stuff that really had nothing to do with the cooling fan that we were putting in, and I didn't want to confuse the two issues. So I wanted to give this explanation its own video so that you guys will understand if you make changes in the Factory 5 template, because that's honestly what it is, and go outside of their parts, you may find that the parts that you're buying look the same, but they don't fit the same. And these wheels in the back are a perfect example of that. The front wheels I think we're going to be able to deal with no problem, but the back wheels are definitely an issue because now we've got all this work that we've got to do in order to make everything work. And the owner had brakes, he had brake brackets, he had emergency brake cables and all that. We're having to revamp all this in order to make them work with these wheels. Now, as it was explained to me, as I said, he got these wheels because the Factory 5 wheels weren't available. There are some people that get these wheels because they like the look better. They like the look of the meatier, bigger back tire. But you have to understand, with those choices, you're going to incur other issues that kind of snowball. And we can see that, you know, simply adding spacers didn't work because it was still, we were still hitting the calipers on the wheel weights. And even if we had chosen to have wheel weights installed in a spot where they may or may not have made any contact with the calipers, when you go to put new tires in your car, are you going to remember to tell the tire place, hey, you guys got to make sure that the weights are in this? I'd rather have it like this, to where no matter where you take it to have new tires put on, they can put the wheel weights on and it's not going to be an issue. I'm waiting on the owner right now to get back with me about rear brake pads. To bleed the brakes, I think I've got a set of pads upstairs that I buy generic pads for Slytherin, and I probably have an extra set upstairs. I'll throw those on just so we can get the brakes bled. And then when the owner makes the choice, because my brakes are power brakes, you know, I don't have to worry about a soft compound tire because I have plenty of pressure behind it when I apply the brakes because they're vacuum actuated. We don't have that issue here. We've got manual brakes, so it's all your left leg providing the pressure to apply the brakes. So we're going to probably want a stickier pad that has a little bit more initial bite and is less prone to fading. So we'll see what happens with the pads. Last thing I want to talk about is 15-inch wheels and tires. Your tire selections have become non-existent with 15-inch wheels. The tires that are on this car are about the only manufacturer that makes 15-inch tires to fit these wheels anymore. Back in the day, you could find BF Goodrich, you could find Goodyear, they had their Eagle 2. Cooper's about the only one out there now that make a radial street tire that's going to fit these wheels, and these are not performance tires. If we look at the tread wear on these, they are a 440. That's passenger tire tread wear. So after the first probably 6 months of these tires, you know, they're gonna be shit. They're already hard. They're nowhere near as soft as the tires that I run on Slytherin. Now, if you're just going to drive the thing to, you know, Cars and Coffee, you know, and you're going to take it out maybe for a spirited ride on a canyon road, these might be just fine. But I'm a performance enthusiast. I like to push the car when I take it out on the track, and these tires wouldn't have enough grip for me. So I don't know what else to tell you guys. Go for the 17 and 18-inch wheel selections. It's going to open up better braking to you because you're going to be able to go with larger calipers, especially if you're in a manual brake situation with your car, which a lot of guys are because they're ordering this car with the Wilwood pedal assembly. I myself would choose to put a Mustang pedal assembly in because I think it works better. But that's my personal choice. The 17 and 18-inch wheels, there's still quite a few manufacturers that are selling tires that fit the front and backs on the Mark IV and the Coupes for that matter, that offer you a wide selection of different compounds so that if you're just going to drive it on the street, you can drive it on the street. But if you're going to want to drive it for autocross and have a tire that does both things somewhat well, you've got that selection. And if you want a full-on race tire, you can go with that too. I don't even think you can get a full-on race tire for these 15s anymore. So if you want to take the thing autocross, and you're going to have to buy another set of wheels just to get a sticky tire. So that's kind of my rant on the wheels and the tire selection. Make your own choice. If you're looking for that nostalgic look, I mean, it's hard to beat a 15-inch wheel and tire combination. I mean, they look cool. But I'm a performance guy, so take that for what it's worth. All right, I would love to dive into the brakes in this video, but I don't feel like dropping the gear oil and stinking up the shop right now because I've got to take the missus out for an anniversary dinner, and I don't want to smell like gear oil. So we'll be doing that in the next video. I'm going to drop the oil out of the back. I'll go ahead and inspect everything. If the fluid in there is good, it's all brand new, it'll probably go back in. And we'll seal up the cover and top off the fluid in there when we're done. But we'll be doing that probably in the next video. So you know the drill, guys. If you're enjoying the content here, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.